Hey guys, welcome to this low body mobility routine. You can make this 20 or 30 minutes long depending on how many sets and reps you're going to. I'm going to show you one total set on each side, and you can decide if you want to go for another set or not. Obviously, the more you do, the better. We're going to start with something called hip cars. Cars are controlled articular rotations. So we're working through our full range of motion. With the cars, you're gonna lie prone, and we have the arms right beside us, lying on the ground. And then before we start, we inhale one deep breath, we engage our core, we radiate, and then we lift one leg off, and we're gonna bend, like we flex our knee, and we lift off into hip extension. And then from there, we externally rotate into abduction and flexion with our leg down. Inhale, lift off, and then we internally rotate into hip extension. If this is too hard for you, you can also just slide on the ground or lay a book underneath your pelvis or abdomen so that you're elevated and you have more room to go through the rotation. This was one rep. We have 3 more to go. Lift off, externally rotate, keep the core engaged, and reverse it. Halfway there. And the last one. Inhale, lift off, externally rotate all the way into lateral flexion. Set the leg down, inhale, and lift it off. Into internal rotation, fighting for extension of the hip, keeping the core engaged, avoiding the lumbar extension. Set it down. Beautiful. Other side. Again, we go into hip flexion and knee flexion. We lift our leg off into hip extension. We externally rotate the leg into lateral flexion of the hip. And we lift off going into internal rotation. Again, second rep. Don't forget to breathe. Keep the core engaged. Internally rotate into hip extension. Set it down. Halfway there. Third rep. Really fight for more range each single rep. And down. Last one. Engage your core. Engage your glutes. And go for the final rep. And down. Beautiful. Come up. We're going into a 90-90 position. Going for external rotation kinetic stretch. So it's a stretch while we stretch, we work on actively going in and out of that stretch. So when we're in this 90-90 position, basically the external rotation kinetic stretch looks like this. Only that when lowering down, I engage my adductors, so all the inner thigh and inner stuff that is facing me is pulling me down into the stretch. So basically decreasing the angle between the leg and my upper body. So this is pulling me in, and when I reach my end point, the outer stuff, so my glutes and all the other stuff that is touching the ground, pushes me back up out of external rotation basically, okay? So we're going for 5 reps. The easier way is to use your hands and have them on the ground. The harder way is to take your hands away and do it without hands, okay? Inhale before you start. engage all the tissue here for the regressive side or for the rails contraction while lowering down into the stretch. So you lower down, have your inner thigh engaged, and then press up using your glutes to push yourself out. In, adductors engaged, push yourself out away from the mat. 3 more to go. Pull. Push. 2 more. And push. And the last one, pull yourself in. Really lower down as far as you can. Feel the stretch at your end point. Push your leg into the ground and your upper body into its starting position. Beautiful. So from here, we're now going and transitioning onto the other side. We're using the 90-90 transition for this. So I start with my right leg now, and I swipe my heel through, the toes stay on the ground, getting into the sleeper position, and my knees try to stay as much away from each other as possible, meaning this leg, the now trail leg, or real leg, the real leg, is trying to stay on the ground for as long as possible. My hands are right behind me, keeping my upper body straight, and then try to put that leg on the ground. Again, I swipe my heel through with my now real leg, and I find myself in a 90-90 position, and I go for 5 reps on this side as well. So again, I engage my core before starting. I inhale, and then engage your tissue here. All the inner thigh working, all the tissue that's facing you is engaged, closing the gap between the leg and the upper body. And push yourself up, pushing the leg into the ground, out of the stretch. And in, out. Really push the earth away from you. Engage your adductors, pull yourself in, and push yourself out. Don't forget to breathe. 2 more to go. Pull. And push. The last one, challenge yourself. Try to not use your arms on this one. And push. Beautiful. You can go for another set or for another 2 sets if you want. We're going to jump into dorsiflexion, meaning we're staying in that 90-90 position. Now I want you to bring that front leg in and bring the rear leg over your front leg. So you hover it over like this. And if you can do it without hands, come into that combat base position. Okay, so we're here in our combat base. What we're doing is we're going for dorsiflexion pairs and rails, meaning we're in this stretch for about 2 minutes. Our heel stays on the ground, and you push our knee as much over our toes as possible. For this, we stay in this position for 2 minutes. Pails will be pushing our toes and our foot into the ground, and rails will be trying to lift it off. So we initiate this movement. Obviously, if we're in our end range of motion, we cannot lift off. It's about that isometric contraction. So we're fighting to lift off, strengthening the range of motion. So when we're here, 2 minutes for the first one, and then in the second set, you can go for 1 minute, and then go for another set of pails and rails if you want to. So we work on the ankle right here, really important for squats. And make sure your heel stays on the ground. Then for the pails contraction, you slowly start ramping up. You inhale, and you slowly start pushing the toes and your foot into the ground, ramping up slowly but surely, 60, 70%, 80, 90, 100%, and we push as hard as we can for 15 seconds. 10, 9, come on, fight, push as hard as you can. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, immediate rails contraction, trying to lift the foot off of the ground, staying in that position, isometric contraction, trying to lift it off. Your toes don't want to touch the ground, come on. Trying to decrease the angle right here. Fight, come on. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stay in the stretch. If you want to go for another round, stretch for 1 minute. And then we're going to change sides. So you stretch for 1 minute and then you go for another set of pails and rails. And then we go for the other side. Again, 2-minute stretch. In our combat base position, heel is on the ground. And then we just stretch it out. You will feel stretch right here behind in your calf. And basically what you're going to do is you put your upper body and lay it on top of your leg to put more weight into it to get most of the passive stretch. You can also use a weight if you want and lay it on top of your knee, but your body works fine as well. And then after 2 minutes, or close to 2 minutes, we slowly ramp up, we radiate, inhale, create core tension, and then slowly start pushing the foot into the ground. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 100% safest maximum effort. Pails, pushing the toes and the foot into the ground as hard as we can. We're staying in that position 10 seconds. We're fighting as hard as we can, pushing as hard as we can into the ground. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Rails contraction, trying to lift the toes off of the ground, maintaining our combat base position, fighting for that isometric contraction as hard as we can. We don't want to lift off, we're only fighting for it. 3, 2, 1. Stay in the stretch, release the tension, and then you can go for another round of pails and rails. Was kommt jetzt?
Hip flex, Hovers, straight leg. 2 Sätze, 6 bis 8 Minuten.
Okay. So now we got hip flex hovers with a straight leg, working on core compression, working on our hip flexors. I only have this thing here, but you can choose how hard the hover or how hard it's supposed to be, how hard you want it. We use an RNC grip here for the other leg, also to avoid compensation from the lumbar spine. So what I'm going to do is, if this is my straight leg, then I go underneath my knee and press my upper body against my leg or my quad. And then the harder I want it to be, the more I straighten the leg, the easier I want it to be, the more I bend my leg, okay? So that's why I said you can choose how hard you want it to be. And then you use an obstacle. Ideally, you're barely able to hover over, so you don't want to be able to hover like this, because then you're not working really hard, because you're most likely compensating in this position as well. So choose a progression where you can barely hover over a small obstacle like this. You can also use a tennis ball, anything similar. So when we're in this position, we irradiate, we engage our quad before starting, then we lift off, we hover over, and we set it down. And then we reverse it. We lift, quad is engaged, hover, and set it down. See how there is not much moving. there's only my leg that is hovering over the obstacle. And if I'm here, I know I can go much higher, but I want to work at my absolute end range of motion, which is why I choose the hardest progression, okay? So let's go. Lift, hover, and set it down. Keep the core engaged, keep the quad engaged. I want you to control both the concentric, so the lift off, hover, and the eccentric when you drop down. I don't want you to just let go, okay? So you have your quad engaged throughout the entire hover. 2 more. And set it down, last one. Reverse it, and down. Beautiful. You can check it out. Ist fertig, oder wie?
Nee, aber ich glaube, das nächste Bein schaffen würde es nicht schaffen.
Okay. So, and then you shake it out, and then you go for the other side. Again, going for 6 to 8 reps on each side. You can go for 2 rounds, 3 rounds, as much as you're able to do. And that's the 20 to 30 minute lower body mobility routine. Try to implement that into your daily life. You will sure benefit from it. Enjoy it.